The day after I wrapped up my divorce, I snagged a train ticket back to my hometown. All I had was my phone ID and a bank card with a really small balance, a meager collection accumulated over the years. The housekeeper rang to say I'd left behind a few things, but I told him to just toss them out. He mentioned that my son had been bugging everyone, insisting on tracking down his mom and that soon enough he'd have a new one, the kind he'd been dreaming about. My son, born of me, bears such a striking resemblance to his dad. Even the woman they both adored was identical. I used to stew over why that person couldn't be me, but now I just feel numb and indifferent. Before the high-speed train roared to life, I uttered my final words on the phone. Tell him not to worry. I'm not going to bug him for the rest of my days. Right after that, I shut off the phone, swapped out SIM cards, and completely cut ties with that city. Next to me sat a young girl, roughly as old as my son, with wide, curious eyes, watching me with suspicion. I once adored kids, but lately nothing really does it for me. The little girl stayed silent the entire ride while her parent blabbered nonstop on a phone call. I slipped on my earphones and closed my eyes for a quick rest. Not long after, someone gently tugged my sleeve. I opened my eyes and saw the little girl again. Auntie, my mom is missing. Can you help me find her? She said. The seat along the aisle where the three of us had been sitting was now empty, and I wasn't sure what had gone down. So I buzzed the train attendant and even called the police. After some digging, it turned out her mom had hopped off at a stop, glancing back worriedly, as if afraid the girl might follow. In short, the kid had been abandoned. Soon the carriage filled with chatter from passengers decrying how heartless her mother was, and many expressed sympathy for the girl. Throughout all that commotion, the little one sat calm and quiet. No tears or theatrics. I decided to flash my identification to the police and handed over my home address and contact details. So, when I eventually got off the high-speed train, aside from my phone ID and an almost empty bank card, I ended up with an unexpected little companion. I soon settled down back in my old town. I overhauled a long-forgotten courtyard, planting fruits and veggies, and I even had a portrait of my late grandmother, Granny Rose, framed and proudly hung in the living room. I named the little girl Sunny. Once all the paperwork was done, my household registration wasn't just a lonely scrap of paper anymore. Sunny rarely cracked a smile and always wore a serious look, studying me intently. Even though she was only 4, she handled things way beyond her years and even whipped up some porridge for me on days I was feeling under the weather. Standing on a stool in the kitchen, I couldn't help but think about my own flesh and blood son, Trey. My boy who, under the Morgan clan's roof, could have been handed an entire ski resort if he fancied skiing, or even a candy factory if he had a sweet tooth. They're such polar opposites. Sunny once asked why I'd chosen to adopt her. She felt like a burden, like a moocher. I ruffled her hair and said, "Because I was damn lonely. Can you stick with me from now on?" After a moment's pause, she nodded vigorously and said, "Okay, I'll be with you for life." And so, days just rolled on. Sunny started kindergarten and then elementary school. She even became the class monitor at one point. There were times she'd get into a scuffle, and it was a shock when I got a call from her teacher. Sunny was known for being obedient and way too mature. She wouldn't even spare a glance at those other kids, let alone pick up a fight. Too childish, as someone might say. So, I rushed over to the school. At the gate, the teacher greeted me with a helpless look. The kid Sunny had clashed with was a new transfer that day, and all I wanted to know was why they'd tussled. The teacher then gave me an odd look and said, "What's going on?" Apparently, Trey said Sunny tried to steal his mom. I froze in shock. The teacher explained that in Sunny's pencil case was a photo of me with her, which Trey had seen, and he accused her of shamelessly trying to take away his mom. I fell silent and followed the teacher into the office. When we got inside, the teacher turned to me and added, "By the way, Trey's dad, Derek, is already here." Standing by the office door, I quietly took in the sight of Sunny diligently working in a corner, looking remarkably composed, and I let out a sigh of relief. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the little boy, whose tantrum had filled the hall earlier, light up when he saw me and scampered over. "Mom!" he exclaimed. I bent down and gathered Trey in my arms. Not exactly a big hug, just a gentle hold, and said, "Little one, you've got the wrong person. I managed a faint smile while meeting the gaze of the man in the room. Hello, Mr. Davis, I said. I'm Sonny's mom, I added, hardly expecting to cross paths with Derek again. The world is huge, and honestly, sometimes you end up bumping into people you'd rather not see. Trey's face, shining with emotion, broke out in tears as he shouted, accusing me of not wanting him. Sonny clutched her pen so tightly I could tell she was irritated. Derek stood there wordlessly, waiting for my reply. Sonny, help me pack up your bag. Can you go home first? I requested, and Sonny promptly nodded, gathered her things, and left without a backward glance. As soon as she was gone, Trey wiped his tears away quickly and then ran over, clinging to my legs. Mom, please don't be mad, okay? I know I was wrong, he whimpered. I bent down with a smile, patted his head, and then looked up at Derek. Mr. Davis, could we talk alone? I asked. My history with Derek was pretty forgettable. Nothing worth mentioning, really. Back when my granny was young, she had done a favor for Derek's family by saving his own granny, who had been kidnapped. So, over the years, his family would always send gifts on holidays. When I was in college, my granny, seeing that I was getting older and didn't quite fit in with big city pace, had contacted Derek's family to help me out. That same year, as I arrived at the train station with my bags in tow, I immediately spotted Derek, leaning casually against his car, tapping away on his phone. He looked so damn dazzling that I nearly wanted to shower him with all the poetic compliments I knew, even if having a crush on him was just a normal, kinda silly thing. I knew we came from different worlds, and I never expected anything more than a friendly nod. Under the glow of a high-hanging moon, as I passed by bathed in its soft light, I felt content. Derek and I ended up at the same university, and he'd occasionally swing by with small gifts from his elders. After some back and forth, we kept things on a friendly, if distant, basis. Later, I even heard that Derek's high school sweetheart had a romance filled with ups, downs, sweet moments, arguments, breakups, and makeups. I was just an onlooker, occasionally feeling a bit lost in the mix. In my junior year, I began an internship that required a long commute because the company was far from campus. One day, I bumped into Derek, and he casually asked how I was doing. I answered honestly. Soon after, I got a call from Derek's granny, Margaret, informing me they had a spare house conveniently near my office and offering me a place to stay. I couldn't refuse the kind old lady's generosity, so I moved in. Once settled, I began to notice little reminders of Derek's past scattered around the place, which made me uneasy. To keep a low profile, I concentrated all my belongings in one room. Then, one night after returning from work, I found a tipsy Derek slumped on the couch. I wanted to maintain my distance, but didn't want him catching a chill, so I grabbed a blanket and draped it over him. When Derek opened his eyes and looked at me, I thought he'd definitely ask why I was there. Instead, he made a move, one that I now see as a huge mistake. I can barely recall the chaotic swirl of that night. The body does weird things, and painful memories sometimes just fade away. Up to now, the kind of thing that happened that night has only ever happened with one person, and he even called out a different name. Funny enough, Derek had only used my name once when we first met at the station entrance. Amber, that's me, he had said. If only things could stay like they were when we first crossed paths. Why all the gloom and autumn breezes, and sorrow in the painted fans? After class, the campus was quiet, and Derek and I stood together at the corridor's end, framed by vibrant greenery. Want to talk alone? He had asked. Just say what's on your mind. With him prompting, I had no reason to hold back. What have you been telling Trey all these years? I queried. What? We've been divorced 4 years, I snapped, explaining. For these 4 years, I've kept my promise to stay away, and I even transferred child support to your account every month. Kids have short memories, and Trey never really cared about me as his birth mom. Without constant reminders, how could he possibly remember or care about me? Derek looked away as I continued. I haven't told him anything. I mean, it's our granny who always reminds him. Then why did he change schools? Derek paused. Because he kept insisting on coming after you. He finally blurted out. I couldn't believe it. In Trey's pencil case was a photo of me with him, and apparently Derek's son from the Morgans, Trey's dad, had seen it and accused me of shamelessly trying to take his mom away. I fell silent and followed the teacher into the office. After a moment of awkward quiet, I showed my ID to the police and left my home address and contact info. By the time I got off the high-speed train, alongside my phone ID and nearly empty bank card, I found myself with an unexpected little one. Back in my hometown, I took to renovating a neglected courtyard, planting a patchwork of fruits and veggies, and I hung up my granny's portrait in the living room as a tribute. I christened the little girl Sunny. Once I had the paperwork sorted, my household registration transformed from a solitary scrap into a symbol of a new beginning. Sunny rarely smiled and always had this intense look in her eyes. She seemed to take everything in with a wisdom beyond her 4 years, even preparing porridge for me on sick days. There were moments when I'd stand on a stool, thinking of my biological son Trey, the little guy who, if he wanted, could have been handed an entire ski resort to satisfy his skiing dreams, or even a full candy factory for his sweet cravings, courtesy of the Morgans' lavish ways. They're so different. One day, Sunny asked why I chose to adopt her. She felt like she was freeloading. I ruffled her hair and said, "Babe, I was super lonely. Stick with me, all right?" After a long, thoughtful pause, she nodded vigorously. "All right, I'll be with you for life." And life marched on. Sunny went off to kindergarten, then elementary school, even becoming a class monitor at one point, and yes, she got into a scuffle once. So imagine my shock when I got a call from the teacher. Sunny, who'd always been so well-behaved and way too mature for her age, wasn't the type to even glance at other kids, let alone pick fights. Too babyish, someone might say. I rushed to the school, and the teacher met me at the gate with a look of resigned helplessness. It turned out that the child Sunny had fought with was a new transfer that very day. All I wanted to know was why they'd bickered. The teacher then gave me a quirky look and said, "What's the deal?" Apparently, Trey said that Sunny wanted to steal his mom. I paused, stunned. According to the teacher, Trey had spotted a photo of you-know-who and Sunny in Sunny's pencil case, and then accused her of brazenly trying to take his mom away. And I said nothing and trailed into the office with the teacher. Once inside, the teacher turned to me and remarked, "Oh, and by the way, Trey's dad, Derek, is already here." Standing at the threshold, I glanced over at Sunny, who was quietly working in a corner, her composure a small comfort, and I sighed in relief. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed Trey, the little guy who'd been throwing his fit, lighting up as soon as he saw me. He dashed over, exclaiming, "Mom!" I bent down, gathered him not in a wild hug but in a gentle embrace, and said softly, "Sweetie, I think you got the wrong person." I flashed a faint smile as I met the eyes of the man in the room. "Hello, Mr. Davis," I introduced myself. "I'm Sunny's mom." I never expected to run into Derek again. The world's vast, and honestly, sometimes you don't see the people you don't want to see. Trey burst into tears, accusing me of not wanting him, while Sunny clutched her pen so tight I could sense her simmering annoyance. Derek just stared silently, clearly waiting for me to say something. "Sunny, help me pack your bag. Can you head home first?" I asked. Sunny nodded promptly, grabbed her things, and left without looking back. As soon as she was out of sight, Trey wiped his tears and scampered over, clinging to my legs. "Mom, please don't be angry, all right? I know I messed up," he pleaded. I bent down, offering him a gentle smile and a pat on the head, then looked up at Derek and asked, "Mr. Davis, can we talk one-on-one?" My history with Derek was pretty average, nothing particularly memorable. Years back, when my granny was younger, she'd done Derek's family a major solid by rescuing his granny from a kidnapping. Ever since, his kin always sent gifts during the holidays. In college, with Granny Rose getting older and worried about me being alone in the big city, she reached out to Derek's family to help out. That same year, as I rolled into the train station dragging my bags, I immediately spotted Derek leaning casually against his car, eyes glued to his phone. He looked so damn striking that I almost wanted to shower him with every pretty word I knew, even if having a crush on him was just one of those random things that happen. I knew we weren't from the same world, and I never hoped for anything deep. Under a moonlit sky, strolling past in its gentle glow, I felt a quiet contentment. Derek and I had our time at university. Sometimes he'd even drop off little treats from his elders. After some back and forth, we settled on polite nods over the years. Later, I even heard about Derek's roller coaster romance with his high school sweetheart, a story full of sweet moments, fights, breakups, and makeups. I was merely a bystander, feeling a little adrift at times. In my third year of college, I started interning at a company far from campus, which meant long commutes every day. One day, I bumped into Derek and he casually asked how I was managing. I answered straight up. Not long after, Derek's granny Margaret called to say they had an empty house not far from my office and generously invited me to move in. I couldn't resist the kindness of the elder, so I moved into that spare place. Once I was settled, though, I started noticing little traces of Derek's past everywhere in the house. That made me a bit uneasy, so I tried to keep to myself, bunching all my stuff into one room. Then, one night, coming home from work, I found a sloshed Derek sprawled on the couch. I wanted to keep my distance, but couldn't let him catch a chill, so I fetched a blanket and draped it over him. Derek opened his eyes and looked at me, and I half expected him to ask why I was there. Instead, he made a move that turned out to be a massive mistake. I can barely recall the chaotic blur of that night now. The body sometimes blocks out painful memories. Up until now, I've only ever done something like that with one person, and funny enough, he even called out a different name that night. Now that I think about it, Derek only ever used my name once when we first met at the station entrance. "Amber, that's me," he had said. If only life could stay as it was when we first met. Why all the bittersweet melancholy and autumn breezes and painted fans? After class, when the campus was hushed, Derek and I found ourselves at the corridor's end, set against a backdrop of lush greenery. "Want to chat alone?" he asked. "Just tell me what's on your mind." With his gentle nudge, I didn't hesitate, and I asked, "What exactly have you been telling Trey these past years?" "What do you mean? We've been divorced for 4 years," I countered. "In these 4 years, I've stuck to my promise and kept away, even sending monthly child support straight to your account. Kids forget, and Trey hardly ever cared about me as his birth mom. Without someone constantly reminding him, how could he hold on to any feelings?" Derek looked away. "I haven't said a word to him. It's Granny who always fills him in." "Then why did he switch schools?" Derek paused before admitting, "Because Trey kept insisting on coming after you." I couldn't believe it. Out of the blue, I learned that Trey, the apple of everyone's eye in the Davis family, had his way of getting whatever he wanted. Even Derek had no backbone when it came to Trey. I lowered my eyes and pondered silently for a moment. Then I smiled and said, "It's all good. Once his expectations come crashing down, he'll naturally want to go back. I've never been someone who's well-liked. After spending time with me, Trey will eventually realize that his memories of me have been way too idealized. In reality, I'm still just me, annoying, unlikable, and someone who might even shame his status as his birth mother." After getting back to my hometown, I opened a little restaurant as a way to make ends meet. Since I couldn't run it solo, I limited the number of customers. Surprisingly, the place picked up in popularity and became a hotspot for tourists. It's funny how things change. When I was 18, I dreamed of being a self-made computer whiz with big prospects. And now, at 28, I'm content running a modest shop of less than 100 square meters, quietly living my life. Ever since Trey switched schools, the driver would always drop him off at my shop after classes. He's one sharp kid, though his only bout of stubbornness came on the day of our reunion. Derek hardly ever showed up anymore, and most of the time, it was just the drivers hanging around Trey. I never really understood what the Morgans were thinking. If they held Trey in such high regard, why would they be so chill, leaving him alone in this remote town? I didn't chase him away. After all, he was the only blood relative I had left in this world. I spent 3 straight days and nights looking after him when he came down with a high fever, even making handmade toys for him that left my hands scarred. I've got to admit, human nature is selfish. When I did all this for him, I never expected anything in return, but all I ended up with was his distaste, disgust, and complete aversion, which hurt more than I cared to admit. When he was younger, he'd cling to me like glue. I'd rock him to sleep and carry him everywhere, enduring all the sneers and complaints at the Morgan's house because he needed me so much. Yet as he grew, learned to walk, and discovered how to say no, he slowly stopped liking me. I'd hold him back when he overate, or give him a stern talking to when he was too willful. Like all kids, he couldn't tell right from wrong, only that I often stepped in. So naturally, he distanced himself. Then one day, when Derek took him out for a spin, Trey looked up and declared confidently, I don't want you to be my mom anymore. I want Auntie Cindy to be my mom. You don't deserve to be my mom. Get out. This is my house. Later, Sunny confided in me privately, asking if she could break off her friendship with Trey because she didn't like him. Of course you can. I don't mind, but it does seem a bit odd. Why don't you like him? Sunny, always straightforward, rarely expressed clear dislike for anyone. Most times she was just indifferent. He hurts you, Sunny said flatly. Every time you see him, you look sad. I was taken aback. You know he's hurting you, right? Sunny lowered her head, sounding a bit gloomy, and murmured, Can I beat him up? I replied, I still can't take on an adult baby girl. I only stand a chance against little Trey. After thinking for a moment, Sunny piped up, Mom, can you send me to learn martial arts? I'm going to be super strong so I can protect you. I promised to enroll Sunny in martial arts lessons without missing a beat. Her master later even said, Your daughter Sunny is tougher than a lot of kids much older than her. I recalled when Derek once jabbed at my nose and mocked, Who would love you, a gal like you? Well, no matter what, Granny Rose loved me, Sunny loved me, and I've come to love myself as well. Derek would occasionally show up at the shop, always looking run down, and he'd sit for a bit, order a couple of dishes, finish his meal, and then drive Trey home. Neighbors on both sides often whispered about whether Derek was chasing after me, a divorced middle-aged woman with a kid. But little did they know it was just Derek picking up Trey, not some romantic pursuit. In the past, I might have wondered what was behind Derek's behavior, but now I'm completely indifferent. Whether he comes or goes makes no difference. Sometimes I wonder when Trey will finally tire of this endless game of trying to please his mom. He's been cooped up in this town for nearly 3 months now with no aquarium, amusement park, or big mall in sight, yet the desire for what he can't have runs deep even in a kid. The more I act like I don't care, the more he clings on. I can often see a lonely look in his eyes when I gently hold Sunny's hand, or when I bend down to adjust her skirt, or when I mysteriously pull out a specially made little dessert for her from the kitchen. But the moment I glance at Trey, he quickly masks his loneliness behind a sweet smile. People's preferences change with their moods. When I care about this child, even a tiny bump or scratch leaves me fretting for half a day. But now, even though I know he's just pretending to be tough, I feel nothing at all. Sometimes I even wonder why he hasn't just left, though his presence is undeniably irritating. I don't hate him. I've just stopped caring. Early summer finally arrived. After the school dispersal ceremony, the summer break officially began. That day, I opened the shop as usual, and Trey's figure was nowhere to be seen until closing time that evening. I figured he'd finally gotten bored of the monotony and decided to return to his rightful status as a precious young master. That evening, as I got home, I found him waiting by the small courtyard gate, clutching an exquisite cake box. Derek was with him too, and there were several gift bags neatly arranged beside them. Their striking handsomeness drew admiring stares from passers-by, but all they cared about was what was in front of them. Dad, when's Mom coming back? Real soon. We want to celebrate her birthday together, and we prepped a ton of gifts. Will she be happy? Trey pursed his lips at that, and a hopeful smile spread across his face. Dressed in a neat little suit, he looked deliberately polished. Yet, despite the stuffy heat that left beads of sweat glistening on his forehead, he only seemed a bit touched, maybe even emotional. I stopped a few steps away while Sunny didn't hesitate to stride right up to them. You got it all wrong. Mom's birthday isn't today, she stated crisply. You're spouting nonsense. Trey rarely confronted Sunny directly anymore, knowing I cherished her and not wanting to rock the boat, so he usually kept his distance. But this time, he stood up forcefully and shouted, Mom's birthday is today. It's the day you and I share. Don't even try to deny it. Derek, who had been silent, suddenly also stood up with a hint of expectation in his eyes. Amber, he awkwardly called out, happy birthday. I walked over, fished out my keys, unlocked the courtyard gate, and coolly looked him in the eye. I forgot to mention, I've changed my birthday now, I said after a pause, adding slyly. But that shouldn't have anything to do with you, right? I used to love birthday celebrations. Granny Rose had this whole ritual where every year on my birthday she'd prepare an enormous spread, a gorgeous cake, and a lovely gift just for me. It was just the two of us at home, yet I never felt lonely. Even when I went off to college and couldn't celebrate at home, she'd always fly to the city to help me blow out my candles and share the cake. When Granny Rose was alive, my birthdays were never dull. That particular year, she came over as usual, but I was already heavily pregnant with Trey. I didn't want to worry Granny, so I hushed up all the rough patches of my pregnancy and fibbed that Derek was giving me top-notch care. In truth, most of the time, Derek barely glanced at me. We lived under one roof, and he practically made me invisible. Back then, I could at least understand his indifference. The night between us was a colossal mistake from the start. I had thought that if Derek got drunk and I slipped away quietly afterward, no one would ever know. But things turned out far differently. Derek kept tormenting me all night until I finally had enough strength to leave, only to be interrupted when Derek's granny, Margaret, came in with some soothing chicken soup. She knew the struggles I'd been through and insisted that Derek take responsibility for what he'd done, even if it meant setting aside his current relationship with Roxy. She didn't care about his social standing or what the Morgans thought. She only cared that she wouldn't let me down, especially not Granny Rose. "I can see you've got feelings for Derek," she said gently. "You're a good kid, and I know you don't want to mess up Derek's relationship with Cindy. But things have already happened. Cindy won't stand for any competition, and now Derek's not with her. So, you want to give Derek a chance?" I admit I had a moment of temptation, but before I could decide, I discovered I was pregnant, and the news exploded, leaving me with no choice but to put up with Derek's disgusted looks and start a marriage doomed from the beginning. I sometimes end up hating myself for compromising too much. I have to pretend to be happy around the elders and act indifferent towards Derek, but the truth is, I'm in constant pain. The morning sickness, bloating, and cramps feel unbearable, and being looked down on by the Morgans, despised by Derek, and mocked by Roxy only add to the torment. I soldiered through until my next birthday, when Granny Rose was actually excited not just about my gift, but also about her future grandchild. She insisted on sticking around until I gave birth and fully recovered. Tragically, Granny Rose never lived to see Trey come into the world. On my birthday, while having dinner with Granny Rose, she witnessed Roxy and Derek in a moment of tenderness. That's when she suffered a heart attack and was rushed to the hospital. It was at that crushing moment my deep-seated resentment toward Derek began to surface. Granny Rose was whisked into the emergency room, and soon the Morgans arrived too. Derek's granny, Margaret, ended up slapping him right in front of me, but I didn't intervene. I just waited for some good news from the operating room until the lights eventually went out. The doctor later came out with a heavy heart and asked me to say goodbye to Granny Rose. I regretted ever asking them to look after her. Through tearful eyes, Granny Rose asked how I was going to manage without her. She left in sorrow, leaving me to drown in despair and agony. That night, I screamed in pain and gave birth to Trey, perhaps out of guilt. After Granny Rose passed and Roxy kept her distance, Derek surprisingly started pitching in more with Trey. I thought this would be my life now, an unhappy marriage with a loveless husband and a son who would never warm up to me. But then Roxy came back and stole all the attention from both Derek and Trey, claiming any affection I might have had. On Trey's birthday, she even promised a grand surprise, and he ran over to her without a second thought. Derek claimed that Roxy didn't care for me, so he didn't bring me along. He promised to drop Trey off before sunset, but they didn't return until early the next morning. I sat by the window, lost in memories of Granny Rose's parting words. "Dear Grandma, I no longer enjoy birthdays. Out of sheer politeness, I let them in and even offered them some water." Sunny, with a marker in hand, pointed at a date on the calendar she'd circled in red and said, "This is Mom's birthday." Trey looked at me, panic in his eyes, clearly wanting to speak but hesitating. He and Derek shared an uncanny resemblance. From their looks down to their actions, they were identical. I suspect I might have just been the one who provided the seed, so that Trey wouldn't remind anyone of me. Derek began piling gifts in a corner and then said, This time it's my bad. Next time, no need. Derek, you don't have to prepare these anymore. I cut in. After a moment, Derek stiffened, and then finally he asked, I'm sorry. Can we talk alone? It was rare for him to even say that. I fixed some sweet drinks for the kids, turned on a children's TV channel, and then led Derek to the gazebo in the yard. It's pretty chill here, he said awkwardly, as if he felt trapped by his own movements. Thanks, I said, cutting right to the chase. Got something to say? Just spill it. I noticed that at that moment, there wasn't any other man around. Derek hesitated a bit before finally asking, Would you be okay if we got remarried? Just for the kids? I stared at him in silence. Derek then shifted uncomfortably. Trey's changed a lot lately. He's not as cocky as he used to be. So, you didn't go through with marrying Miss Roxy? I asked, and Derek froze. Everyone used to say she was the perfect match for you, Trey's mom, as they'd call her. Though you never said it outright, it was obvious you agreed. So, I made my move. What about you, though? Did you end up together? He couldn't meet my eyes. Derek's hands curled and then relaxed. That's all in the past. It's over for us now, he murmured. But we do have a kid. So what? I pressed. Derek, stop using others as an excuse. First it was Roxy, now it's Trey, I said softly. Is it really that hard to admit you still got feelings for me? Our marriage dragged on for 4 years. I might be a bit of a people pleaser, but if Derek hadn't given me even a hint of hope, I wouldn't have stuck it out for so long. I wondered, when did he start liking me, and how much did he like me? I wasn't entirely sure. I guess I just inherited Granny Rose's habit of trying to mend things instead of tossing them out, even when they weren't good anymore. I used to think maybe you had such a strong moral code that you couldn't fall for anyone other than Roxy. But then I realized, if your morality was so strict, how come you still kept an ambiguous relationship with your first love once you were married? In the end, you're just selfish. Even trying to get back together with me, you had to use Trey's abandonment as an excuse. Derek, have we missed our chance? He asked hoarsely. It's not a matter of being too late, I sighed. It's just that it's all in the past now. Look ahead, I advised him, and he covered his eyes with his hands. I knew his pride too well. Seeing him distraught didn't warm my heart either, so I quietly stood up and left this small world for him. Just before I left, he reached out and clutched the hem of my skirt with whitened knuckles and visible veins. He'd lost weight, and a distinct aura of decay clung to him that he couldn't hide. I heard his stifled sob, saw his trembling shoulders, and told him, Don't come back, Derek. Go on, return to your own life, and take Trey with you. I smoothed out my skirt as I walked away, almost forgetting to mention, by the way, today is not only my birthday, it's also our divorce anniversary, the day I found Sunny. She doesn't even know her actual birthday, so we agreed to change it. Think of it as an early birthday gift from you. Now, give me some peace. Derek left without a word, taking Trey along. He didn't say anything, but Trey understood. Before parting, Trey clung stubbornly to my leg, crying his little heart out, pleading, Don't leave, Mom. Please let me stay. I'll be good. No more making you sad. Don't send me away. Dad, you're such a liar. You said Mom would forgive me, but you're a big liar, a jerk. Just go away. The car door slammed shut, and I saw Trey sobbing against the window, pounding on it with all his might, gazing at me with utter pitifulness. Derek yanked him away roughly, ordered the driver in a low growl, Go! And never even glanced back. Sunny stayed by my side, watching me expectantly. What's wrong? I asked softly, lowering my head. They won't come back, right? She queried. No, they won't. Sunny, are you sad? I smiled gently, ruffled her hair, and said, Everything will pass, sweetie. Just remember, no matter how painful things get, as long as you keep moving forward without looking back, you'll make it through. I might be way ahead, but it looks like Derek and the others are stuck in the same spot. It doesn't matter because we're on different paths, so there's no need to wait for them. That night, I had a dream. I went back a few years, to when Trey was just born. Taking care of him was exhausting, and I had unintentionally dozed off on the couch. In that hazy state, I dreamt that Derek came home late from work, picked me up, carried me upstairs, and gently laid me on the bed. He brushed the stray hair from my forehead and softly kissed me. "Good night, honey," he murmured. Back then, I truly believed we'd spend a lifetime together. But later I realized a lifetime is way too long, and no one can stick with someone for their entire life. Derek was just a passing chapter in my story, brightening an otherwise quiet existence. But that was it, Derek. Us? It was long over. After Derek and I divorced, the whole atmosphere at the Morgans' place stayed gloomy for a long while. The woman who never quite fit in eventually left, but the relief I expected never really came. Derek turned even more taciturn after our split. He was always either off on some business trip or crisscrossing the country. Even when he was home, he'd often go straight to bed. Trey, on the other hand, ran around carefree with the nanny, throwing tantrums whenever things didn't go his way. Then, one day, out of the blue, he asked, "Where's Mom?" The nanny was at a loss. She didn't know what to say. Proactive as ever, Trey searched under tables, in closets, even in the garden, but found no trace of me. Huh? Where'd Mom hide? He wondered. Kids forget things fast, but Trey was smart. He could still vividly remember the last time he saw me. That morning, before I left, I had smiled and patted his head, saying, "Mommy's leaving. I used to wish you'd be a well-behaved kid, but now I see you're not like me. You've got the means to be pretty stubborn. Just be happy, okay?" Back then, Trey didn't really take my words to heart. He was fed up with my endless nagging and controlling nature. Yet later, as he recalled those words and looked around the sprawling mansion, finding no trace of me, he finally began to feel an overwhelming sadness. That evening, when Derek came home, Trey grabbed his hand in a way that was uncharacteristically direct. "Dad, did you have a fight with Mom?" Derek stopped, looked down at Trey's innocent face, and with a furrowed brow said, "Can you apologize and make up with your mom? I haven't seen her in forever. I really want to have some of her delicious sweet and sour ribs tonight, okay?" Trey's expectant face made Derek's expression morph gradually from blank to a rather sinister smile as he said, "I didn't have a fight with her. I got divorced. You know what that means? It means she doesn't want you. No matter what you do, she won't see you. She won't care about you. She's left you. Capiche?" Derek almost seemed to enjoy the fear he elicited in Trey as he repeated, "She doesn't want you. She's going to have other kids who are more obedient and lovable than you. You don't weigh anything in her heart anymore." Trey burst into tears, screaming, "You're lying. Mom would never not want me." I tried to interject, "Mom, I love you the most." But Derek laughed dismissively. "You've been misled, kiddo. You think she loves you the most? Ha, come on now. What a load of nonsense. Derek, what on earth are you telling the child?" Members of the Morgans crowded around trying to console a distraught Trey. "Don't cry, Trey," they coaxed. "Dad's just messing with you. Your mom's out of town for a bit. She'll be back in a few days, all right?" "No, no, I want to see her now," Trey protested vehemently. Derek, clearly fed up with Trey's tantrums, glowered at him, his face blank as he eventually marched upstairs. The bedroom was unchanged from before I left, complete with that huge wedding photo on the wall. Sometimes Derek just didn't know what he was thinking. When he broke up with Roxy in the past, he would delete every sentimental memento without a second thought, trying to erase every trace of her from his life. But after divorcing me, he left everything untouched, almost as if tossing them out would mean losing a part of himself. He tried so hard to keep his emotions in check to prove that my leaving hadn't hurt him, claiming that divorcing a woman he never truly loved was a relief. About 6 months after we split, Roxy asked if he wanted to remarry, and after a long pause, he just grumbled, "Forget it." Trey was even saying he wanted to find her the other day. If I were to marry you, I don't know how he'd throw a tantrum. Roxy looked into his eyes and pressed, "You're not really marrying me just because of Trey, are you? What else is it about?" Roxy even laughed sarcastically at him, saying, "Derek, sometimes I really admire you. For real, you even fool yourself." I never quite understood what exactly he was fooling himself about. Over time, when Trey turned 18, Derek remained single. But I ended up remarrying. I married a quiet, kind programmer named Evan, soft-spoken and genuinely gentle. It seemed that birds of a feather really do flock together, because even Trey, my biological son, ended up getting a lot of attention from Evan. On our wedding day, Trey attended the ceremony, and later at the dining table, he remarked to Derek that the atmosphere at the wedding was low-key yet lively. Derek just silently chewed his food without even bothering to look at Trey, typical of our interactions. We were just like a posh family on the surface, polite but devoid of real warmth. Little did Trey know that Derek had also been at that wedding that very day, so much so that Derek even slipped a red envelope with a bank card inside for me. Evan's soon-to-be wife, who was never one for grandiose displays, simply shook her head and said, "Keep it. I know you don't really need it, but it's just a token of my appreciation." Derek briefly averted his gaze, as if he were afraid that looking too long would make him feel embarrassed and begged me not to leave. Later in the dressing room, someone knocked on the door asking, "Bride, are you ready? It's showtime." "All right," I said. "By the way, has Trey come out yet?" I asked Derek. "Nah," he replied, shaking his head as he moved toward the door. Then, almost suddenly, as he reached for the doorknob, Derek said, "There's something I've never told you." "What is it?" I asked. With a tone of quiet confession, he said, "I used to be so jealous of Trey and even Granny Rose. Everyone always said you loved me to bits, but I always felt that deep down, Granny Rose meant more to you than I ever could." I was taken aback. "What are you talking about?" Derek's voice was calm as he continued. "Ever since Trey was born, no matter what we were doing the moment he cried, you'd be too busy to notice." He added, "So I never really liked Trey. Maybe deep down I always wanted all of your attention." Derek then chuckled wryly and added, "But I wasn't that lucky. I lost everything I once had." And he wasn't blaming alcohol at all. That night, as I listened, I finally realized that Derek's confessions meant he was still hurting. With a weary sigh, I glanced at him and said, "If you're not happy going forward, then sure, find someone else. But if you are happy, don't bother me." "You know I'm not a good person, Amber," he murmured. "Seeing you happy, it's not because of me, but I sometimes feel like stirring up trouble." Ever since Evan showed up on my doorstep, Derek had known that his urge to cause chaos, hidden like a slimy reptile in the shadows, was starting to boil over. Yet seeing me so genuinely happy at Evan's wedding made it painfully clear that not witnessing that moment was, in a way, the best thing Derek could have done. Was he sad? Yeah. Regrets? Sure, a few. But no matter how sorrowful or regretful, he and I had reached our end. I recall the first time I met Derek like it was yesterday. Granny Rose had sent me to pick up a girl from the countryside, a task I wasn't too thrilled about. Just moments before our eyes met, I was complaining to a friend on the phone. But then I looked up, and the moment I saw Derek, I nearly forgot how to breathe. He was like a cool breeze, sweeping away the intense summer heat, leaving only the chirps of cicadas and rays of fragmented sunlight through the trees. A brief heartbeat that changed everything. Before I knew it, there was no turning back. I watched as the sunlight on him dimmed, while shadows grew larger, and by then I truly believed he would stay by my side forever. In a daze, it all seemed like a dream. I even dreamed of the day we got married. At the ceremony, the officiant asked through the mic, "Through thick and thin, in sickness and in health, Mr. Davis, do you take Miss Amber to be your wife?" I can still hear his answer. "I do.